The FBI continues searching a Phoenix apartment belonging to a man accused of shooting a Texas security officer to death. I'm Miranda Kahn, and this story tops your Newsmax Now update. The shooting took place outside a venue that was hosting a free speech exhibit of Prophet Muhammad cartoons.
Jesus Christ on a cross in a jar of urine. It may be offensive to many, but nobody went around killing people or burning embassies.
Some attendees say they weren't sure if they heard gunshots or fireworks. Meantime, the White House says President Obama has been briefed on the situation. New York police officers are now undergoing a $750 million retraining program. It's a refresher course on how to defuse situations. Comcast, America's largest cable provider, actually has more internet customers than it does cable subscribers. Experts predict the number of internet-only subscribers will increase because of streaming TV. Two of Chris Christie's former allies will head to a federal courtroom today. Prosecutors say they conspired to shut down lanes at the George Washington Bridge. Meanwhile, Governor Christie took to Twitter and continues to deny any involvement. And Prince William and his wife Kate have finally named England's new princess. According to the palace, her name is Charlotte Elizabeth Diana. Congrats.
Well, a fitting name there for the young princess.
I like that they pay tribute to his mother, Diana.
Nice touch there. All right, there may be new life for a lawsuit challenging Obamacare's contraception mandate. The Supreme Court recently struck down a previous ruling in favor of that mandate. Now a lower court will reconsider whether or not to move this ahead. They're going to reconsider whether Catholic ministries in Michigan and Tennessee should be exempt from providing their employees birth control. A lot to get to here, so let's bring in Dr. Elena George. Not only is she a board-certified doctor, but she's also the host of her own radio show called Medicine on Call. Dr. George, so great to talk to you today.
It's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you for having me.
All right, so if this lower court does rule in favor of these Catholic ministries, will it affect the employer mandate, the employee-employer relationship, and more importantly, for you, doctors treating them?
No, not in the classic sense of everyday patient care, but it is a good sign that the onerous parts of this law is being looked at and being removed, because these mandates really fly in the face of patient care and the Hippocratic Oath.
All right, so a lot of folks are watching to see what happens with that particular court case. Now, let me ask you a more general question. If doctors know if one treatment is covered by insurance and another one isn't, does that affect the way that most doctors in this country deal with or treat a patient?
No. I'm not exactly sure how you mean that question. Ultimately, most doctors in this country accept insurance and they take it, and they actually don't perform any procedure or send patients for tests if it's not covered under their insurance. So it actually acts as a barrier to providing care based on coverage.
Yeah, well, you hear about reports that doctors feel like they have to do certain tests to cover certain protocols, but then they also feel like if they're, you hear doctors getting accused of over-treating things because they know that payment is eventually going to come. And if that is the case with Obamacare, are we going to see more treatment that is unnecessary? I believe that's where that question came from. Well,
let's be clear here. Doctors do not do procedures or send people for tests to make money. That's some sort of misconception that you get paid for ordering tests. That is not true. If you send someone for an MRI or a CT scan, that does not come back to your office as payment. That is just clinical judgment and helping you make a diagnosis. There's been a lot of misconceptions about Obamacare, and doctors have been the front line of being abused by this system. When in actuality, we only count for 17 cents of the healthcare dollar. So it's not the doctors that's costing people money. It's the insurance companies, the regulations set by the government, and everything else that makes up this medical bureaucracy.
And fair point there, and that thesis has been put out there. And I also want to ask you about another topic. You talked about misinformation, and we discussed this in the setup for this interview. A recent op-ed piece by Paul Krugman in the New York Times talking about folks who predicted the disasters of Obamacare and they have not come to pass. I wanted to get your response to Paul Krugman on this, because I'm sure you disagree.
Oh, absolutely. It's just an example of political doublespeak. Ultimately, if he was paying any attention to what's going on in healthcare, the healthcare costs have dropped, not because it's cheaper, but because it's gotten so expensive that people can't afford to access the healthcare. The out-of-pocket costs have gone up. The insurance companies have limited their doctor panels. They've also limited what they cover, so you can't actually get care because it's not allowed. And that goes back to your first question. If the insurance companies don't allow a procedure or a test, then it actually doesn't get done. And the person who suffers is the patient.
Yes, there is a big barrier sometimes between the insurance companies and the doctors and their patients, and something that needs to be worked on. Dr. Elena George, thank you so much for being with us. Real quickly, in about 5 seconds, if you can give us a response to Ben Carson jumping in the race. Is it going to be good to have a doctor in this discussion?
I think it'd be wonderful. Somebody who actually is a doctor-patient advocate instead of a policy wonk would be a nice change.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Elena George. After the break, did Marilyn Mosby endanger the lives of indicted police officers by releasing their names? We'll talk about that and much more in our roundtable discussion right after this.